Good Friday morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to yet another weekly Friday edition of the Alan Fitz podcast here on YouTube, aka also known as the chat. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Fitz. I am the host for the program, and welcome into the show. And as always, we always start off our podcast welcoming in our three main listening audiences. Number one, those that do agree with what we talk about here on the podcast. They do leave positive reinforcement out there on different social media platforms, family, friends, and just people in general. Thank you for what you do out there. Our number two listening audience, well, they don't quite agree, ladies and gentlemen, with everything that we do discuss here on the podcast, and that's okay. However, these people are, they're sensible adults out there. They do leave positive criticism, and we do thank you for that. We do take that positive criticism into consideration. And of course, last but not least, the haters out there. Well, folks, they can't see the forest for the trees, and I think we all know who those folks are. And you know what? Those folks are the ones that inspire the chat to keep going every Friday morning at sunrise. So we want to welcome in the haters as well, and welcome you in as well on this sunrise Friday morning, live from our studios right here in Amarillo, Texas. Folks, we're going to be talking about something local here in the Texas Panhandle this morning, and we're going to get around to the story of Odd. That's A-U-D. He's the great big concrete dinosaur that oversees U.S. Highway 83 on the northbound side as you come into Canadian, Texas. But before we start this, I know a lot of you, and I have counted 4 so far, emails wanting to know who is Jeremy and Hope Reams, names that are showing up on our title card that has been up all week at alanfitz.com. So before we get into the show this morning, let me back up just a little bit, because I need to explain who those two people are, and because we don't want to create any confusion here on the chat. We never want to mislead our listeners in any shape, form, or fashion. Let me back up a step or two and explain why their names are appearing on our title card. A few months back, excuse me, I was inside the QT convenience store off of Interstate 40 here in Amarillo, and I was talking to one of our Potter County deputies, trying to get some information if he could point me in the right direction, that I wanted to do a podcast on the big green dinosaur outside of Canadian. And the deputy, and I can't even recall his name at this given time. I see him quite often inside of QT, and there's a free plug for you guys over there at the QT store. He had written down a telephone number for me, and come to find out that telephone number was a friend of his that lived over in Canadian that could have possibly pointed me in the right direction of someone that really knew the true story behind how the green dinosaur came to be and was built many, many years ago outside of Canadian. And let me stop right there and say Canadian, Texas may ring a bell to a lot of you folks listening this morning. Yeah, that's the Canadian Wildcats football team we're referring to that has repeatedly gone to AT&T Stadium in Arlington. They've won a few state championships and they've lost a few, but they're always up in the ratings. So yeah, that's exactly where we're talking about. It's Canadian, Texas, in Hemphill County. Anyway, getting back to the story, I told the deputy that I would give his friend a call, and purchased my drink, and out the door I went. Well, as I was going out the door, there was this rather heavy-set gentleman that came out the door behind me and stopped me and introduced himself as Jeremy Reams. Mr. Reams claimed that he had vast knowledge of ODD, how it was created, this, that, and the other, and then this rather heavy-set female walked up to him, introduced herself as his wife, and on we went. And if I recall her name correctly, I believe she was Lee Ann. Let me double check this information. No, I'll correct myself. That's Jeremy and Hope Reams. I'm looking back at the title card on my webpage right now. And anyway, they both, we talked for roughly about 20 minutes. And they said that they would like to come on the podcast. It was more Jeremy than it was Hope. And during our 20-minute conversation, Mr. Reams raised a red flag in my mind that I don't think this individual knows exactly what he's talking about. So we kindly continued on with the chat and went our separate ways. And a few days later, folks, I had the opportunity to call the gentleman that the Potter County deputy provided me with his telephone number, and explained to him, that I was a professional podcaster here in Amarillo, and I wanted to try to get some information and do a podcast on the green dinosaur. And told him about Jeremy and Hope Reams that also approached me outside the QT in Amarillo, and that's where things took a turn for the worst. He told me to contact the Hemphill County Chamber of Commerce, which in turn led to me calling the Hemphill County Sheriff's Office in Canadian. We here at the podcast learned some very negative information on both Mr. and Mrs. Reams and decided to scrub them from the podcast. Apparently, I was right on my red flag in my mind hunch that hit. So that is why you are seeing their names on the title card. Originally, when the title card was put up a couple of months ago, Jeremy Reams was to be on the podcast with me, actually live through our Twitch channel that we use occasionally. But after talking to very reliable sources at the Hemphill County Sheriff's Office in Canadian, Texas, and learning what we did learn about the Reams, we decided to scrub them from the podcast. And I was able to talk to the gentleman that the deputy did supply me his telephone number. He did ask me to make him remain anonymous on this, just out of personal safety for himself and his family. We do respect that here on the Alan Fitz podcast, and we will do just what he requested. Before we get into the heart of ODD, the green dinosaur, let me talk a little bit about where ODD is actually located. And I know a lot of you are hearing me say odd, and you're thinking the word ODD. It's AUD, ladies and gentlemen. ODD. AUD is the name that Gene Cockrell gave his project. And we're going to get into a little bit who Gene Cockrell is a little bit later on the podcast, and we're also going to expressively talk about the green dinosaur, Odd. But let me start this version of the podcast off talking about where Odd is actually located. And his home is just outside, actually to the south of Canadian, Texas, which is the seat of Hemphill County. We did reach out again to the Hemphill County Chamber of Commerce, and they did provide us with some information on the big green dinosaur. And again, we'll get into that here a little bit later. But let's talk about Hemphill County for a moment. We're going to go back to the year 2020 when the latest census took place in Hemphill County. And according to the Census Bureau records, the population of the entire county is only 3,382 people. That's small for a county. Hemphill is the county seat and the only incorporated community in the county of Hemphill County. Now, Hemphill County was created, ladies and gentlemen, in 1876 and organized itself in 1887. It is named for John Hemphill, who was a judge and Confederate congressman. Okay, now, a lot of you have probably heard of Hemphill, but let's not confuse Hemphill County with Hemphill, Texas. And Hemphill, Texas is located in East Texas. It's actually the seat of Sabine County. So it has the same name, but we're referring to the county of Hemphill, not the city of. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the early history of Hemphill County. For the 200 years leading up to 1875, and this began in 1675, nomadic Indian tribes representing the Apache, Comanche, Kiowa, and others roamed the Panhandle following a huge bison buffalo herd. Now, the Indians were in search for an alternative route to California through Santa Fe, New Mexico. A man by the name of Joshua Gregg and Captain Randolph Marcy surveyed trails that crossed Hemphill County following the south bank of the Canadian River. In the year 1874 and into 1875, Red River War was an effort by the United States Army to force the Indians of the Southern Plains to move to Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. Two major battles took place in what would have become Hemphill County: the Battle of the Lyman's Wagon Train and the Battle of Buffalo Wallow. On April the 12th of 1879, Wheeler County became the first organized county in the Texas Panhandle, with 14 other unorganized counties attached to it, one of which was Hemphill County. And finally, in Hemphill County was organized itself properly in July of 1887. So now that you know a little bit about Hemphill County, let's talk about this roadside attraction. Well, he's not really a roadside attraction because you can't get to him. You have to look up at him while he's looking down at you. It is Odd, the icon of Hemphill County. This is also known as Gene Cockrell's dinosaur. And we're going to talk about Gene Cockrell and why he built Odd. Now, in early 1992, Gene Cockrell, who actually passed away in 2013, he took $2,000 worth of concrete and steel and built a dinosaur on a bluff outside his hometown of Canadian, Texas. Yes, Mr. Cockrell did it. He said so that the local children heading up U.S. Highway 83 would always know that they were almost home. Folks, I can tell you I have driven past this remarkable dinosaur statue many, many times on U.S. Highway 83, traveling from Childress up to Perryton. He is out in the middle of nowhere, but you know when you see him that you are almost in the town of Canadian. So I can understand why the late Gene Cockrell said what he said. Now, Mr. Cockrell also stated in the building of Odd that he wanted to curious travelers to ask about it in town. In other words, people see this thing up on this bluff, and they go into Canadian, and the first place they come to, they say, what in God's name is that up there on top of that mountain? He then directed to his house to see his yard art. He named the dinosaur Odd after his wife Audrey. They were married back in 1947. So let's talk a little bit about Odd and his dimensions, if you will. When you're traveling on U.S. Highway 83 and you look up on the bluff, Odd doesn't look to be that big. In fact, and in reality, ladies and gentlemen, he is 50 feet long, 17 feet tall, and he weighs 2,000 pounds. One solid ton. Now, the road to the top of the bluff is gated. But Gene did, on his page, took a few photos back in 1994 and posted them to his website. Now, on his website, Gene does say, watch out for the rattlesnakes. The view on the webpage is very impressive, but people on top of the bluff that did get to visit this icon before the gates were sealed mostly eyed weedy ground around Odd. Now, in the information that we requested from the Hemphill County Chamber of Commerce, they did send us some information because we weren't able to interview Mr. Cockrell because, again, I said he did pass away in 2013. But they did tell us in this information that we did ascertain that Gene regularly visited Odd to give her new coats of paint and to patch her for bullet holes. Now, apparently, some people had went up there and decided to shoot at the dinosaur. From what we understand, they never did get caught. Or if they did, nobody has talked about it. But this is why he had to frequent his work of art, is because of the weather fading the paint and, of course, patching up the bullet holes. Gene described Odd as a labor of love. And the bluff could be an unforgiving place at times with Texas weather, especially the rattlesnakes that are up on the bluff. Gene once said, I tried to give the old gal to the city manager one time. I said it only cost about $40 to paint it. And the mayor said, "Ha ha, no you don't. I'm not falling for that." So we're talking about, once again, a 50-foot long, 17-foot tall, 2,000-pound concrete model of a dinosaur. Now we're going to turn on the podcast a little bit, and I'm going to give the Lamb County Leader News here some credit this morning, because I do want to read what they posted about odds standing in the wildfire situation that we had a couple of years ago up here in the Texas Panhandle. Now, for those of you that may not remember this, most of Roberts County was completely scorched and burned up. This also applied to Hemphill County as well. A couple of years ago, Texas Panhandle wildfires burned through 1 million acres of land. And again, the Lamb County News Leader published an article that I would like to read for you listeners out there of how Odd was still standing, his fighting spirit. Because you see, Odd, ladies and gentlemen, witnessed the Texas Panhandle fires of Hemphill County. This is what the Lamb County News Leader published. If you ever want to know when you're about to arrive in Canadian Texas, just look for Odd. She's a bright green dinosaur sitting atop a hill just south of the Hemphill County seat. The creation of Gene Cockrell, named after his wife Audrey, a focal point for kids traveling to see grandparents in the summer, and a symbol of happiness for a small Texas Panhandle town. The Lamb County News Leader went on to say, and for the past few days she's been all over the news, except this time she's surrounded by smoke. Multiple wildfires began eating their way through the Texas Panhandle on Monday. With 50 to 60 mile per hour winds on both Monday and Tuesday with little containment progress, more than 1 million acres have burned, more land mass than the entire state of Rhode Island. It's a heartbreaking situation. People have lost homes, livestock, and loved ones. There are many photos on social media showcasing the devastation of land, cattle, and communities. You can find all the news you want on this fire online. Everyone is covering it, so I'm not going to. This is whoever wrote this article for the Lamb County News Leader. We'll go back and tell you who that is in just a moment. The article goes on to say, today I'm going to focus on Odd and what she represents. I don't know why Gene Cockrell made a concrete dinosaur and put it on top of a hill. A dinosaur statue seems like an odd thing to add to the pasture land. Some say he did it to let the children know when they were almost home after long car rides. It's a cool story and can be true based on the multitude of memories shared on social media of coming over the top of the hill and seeing Odd on their way into Canadian while traveling. Whatever the reason, the dinosaur statue could not be more fitting for times like those. Most people believe that the behemoth referred in chapter 40 of Job in the Bible is the type of dinosaur. In verse 23 of that same chapter, the text in the Bible says, "Behold, if the river is turbulent, he, behemoth dinosaur, is not frightened. He is confident through Jordan, rushes against his mouth." The dinosaur mentioned there stood strong and never wavered through the rivers that rushed at him. Fire rushed Canadian earlier this week, and Odd is still standing. She represents the resilience of Panhandle Texans because they have been through, in the past couple of years, wildfire after wildfire. Last May, our social media feeds were full of people trying to help Perryton after the double tornadoes ripped through their town. Now everyone is banding together to help Hemphill, Hutchinson, and all the counties affected. Watching the ag community take care of their own is a beautiful thing, even amid devastation. While we wish so badly this tragic event had not happened, it does illustrate the beautiful dimension to humanity when we all come together. Plains Cotton Growers is praying for all those affected by the Panhandle wildfires. And one day, we won't endure tragedy, as Isaiah says. "For now, says the Lord, I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you." Well, this is what they wrote. And that article, again, I would like to give credit to the Lamb County News Leader and the individual that wrote that article that I just read. Her name is Kara Bishop from the Plains Cotton Growers. And she wrote that article on Saturday, March the 2nd of 2024. You know, folks, last week we talked about an icon, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel out on the eastern shore of Virginia. That, you know, we talked about the seven wonders of the world, and that I thought that this should be placed as the eighth wonder of the world. It was a modern engineering marvel. The bridge that ran from the mainland over to the eastern shore in Northampton County. Well, Odd is truly, I wouldn't say he's a ninth wonder of the world, but it's not something every day that you see that people do. And I think Mr. Gene Cockrell was very positive in his creation of Odd. Now, let's talk a little bit about his yard art that he had back in this time after he created Odd. And I do not know, I haven't been over to Canadian, Texas in quite some time here from Amarillo. I haven't had any reason to go over there. But back in this time, and I guess I'm going to assume this is still there, if Miss Cockrell, if Miss Audrey is still alive, this is at 15,115. Let me read that out once again. 15115 Marshall Drive in Canadian, Texas. And I just want to explain to you some of the yard art that we have found through their website. I have not physically been to Canadian to see this, but this is actually from a lady by the name of Anna Minister that posted some of this yard art work on her website. Some of the yard art does feature appears to be a mama and a baby dinosaur, and it also has a sign out there in the front that says "Do not climb on animals," and that's to be expected. You know, nobody wants a child or something to crawl up on one of these yard art decorations and then fall off and break a leg or something like that. Lawsuits, this, that, and the other. So that's to be expected. But I do see a photo of a mama and baby green dinosaur. I also see a photo of what appears to be Jesus standing in a pasture with very high grass. It has a lion and a lamb, and he's holding the Bible in his left hand. There's also a photo of what appears to be a UFO and Martians standing underneath it. There is some cowboy and Indian yard art along with an elephant and things of this nature, other dinosaurs, buffaloes, and things of that. This is at the Gene Cockrell location, again at 15,115 Marshall Avenue in Canadian, Texas. Again, I do not know if this is still actually physically visible if you pass by there. But I do want to read something here that Anna Minister did post on this webpage that we're looking at to keep time going here on the chat. She said here momentarily, let me get back to this, regarding the concrete figures arranged across the yard of the late B.G. Gene Cockrell. The artist reportedly claimed that there are simply things that he saw that he wanted to build. These are things that he, apparently Mr. Cockrell, created in his mind and made it physical for everyone to see. She goes on to say the modest self-assessment may be entirely true, but it fails to express what a keen eye Cockrell had for the iconic dinosaurs, Native Americans, Jesus, mythical creatures, extraterrestrials, an American bison, and 24 sculptures are all instantly recognizable as a part of his contemporary culture. Now, at one time, his most well-known creation was a cowgirl attired only in boots and hat, holding a rope. And yes, I do see that photo as I continue reading this article. It reflects a double standard for women and men, but naked ladies are also in the portfolio of images we collectively share. Now, Cockrell's wife Audrey made him clothe the cowgirl, who now stands to the right of the two American natives on horseback. Cockrell also began fashioning his creations in the early 1990s after retiring from the Texas Highway Department. These sculptures are constructed from steel and concrete, and the evident skill that Mr. Cockrell developed while he worked for the Highway Department. His largest work is the 1-ton, 50-foot long, 17-foot dinosaur on a hilltop south of Canadian. Again, Cockrell named that figure Odd for his wife in her obituary, called the concrete creature a standing memorial of their love. Miss Audrey died in 2019, and Gene preceded her, or rather predeceased her, by 6 years. Although this artist is no longer with us, his artwork remains and is well maintained and dressed, as the case may be. So yes, apparently at the address of 15,115 Marshall Drive, you can still see this beautiful yard artwork. For those of you that have never been to Canadian, Texas, it's an old down hometown, if you will. It has a lot of history to it. There's a lot of history to it in Hemphill County. And getting back a little bit to Hemphill County, they were the influence, for those of you that may not know this, on the Santa Fe Railroad system. Let's talk a little bit about that, shall we? In 1886, the Southern Kansas Railway Company, a Santa Fe subsidiary, began to build a rail line into the Panhandle of Texas. The tracks entered Hemphill County during 1887 and further encouraged settlement in the area, creating three town sites as Mendota, Canadian, and Glacier. In 1907, Canadian was designated a division port by the Santa Fe, a factor that brought diversification to the previously ranching economy of the area. The Santa Fe influence remained very strong into the mid-1950s when the railway moved its employees right here to Amarillo. Meanwhile, Hemphill County was roughly the midway point of two smaller lines, the Clinton, Oklahoma Western Railroad Company and the Clinton, Oklahoma Western Railroad Company of Texas. And one thing that I'm sure a lot of you Panhandle folks that are listening to the podcast this morning can say is Canadian, Hemphill County, and its neighboring Ochiltree County, just to its northwest, are very rich in oil production. Let me tell you a little bit about that. During the 1970s, the county, and we're talking about Hemphill County, grew due to a rapid expansion of oil production. Though oil was discovered in the county in 1955, the production remained relatively small because the technology had not yet progressed to efficiently capture the very deep reserves known to exist like today. Now, by 1974, oil production had reached 999,000 barrels and more than 1 billion barrels in 1978. And folks, I can remember when I was in school, I remember reading some information about Hemphill County, Texas, and the oil production boom. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that may not know this, this is where it all got started in Texas. This is where the oil production boom got started. Now, let's back up just a little bit. This is oil production boom in the Texas Panhandle, not the state of Texas. Oil production boom in the state of Texas began at Spindletop down in southeast Texas in the town of Beaumont. But during the 1970s, the oil production boom began in Hemphill County for the Texas Panhandle. In the year 2000, about 505,000 barrels of oil and more than 8 billion cubic feet of natural gas were produced solely in Hemphill County. And the future looked very bright. And it continues on today. Hemphill County, very, very rich in oil production. It's number 2 leader. Right behind it, Northwest County, Ochiltree, the seat of Perryton, Texas, right up on the Oklahoma border. Very, very rich in oil production. We have just a little bit more time left on the podcast. So let me talk a little bit about the census of Hemphill County. Now, we had talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. The 2000 census, again, there were about 3,351 people 1,280 households and 948 families resided in Hemphill County. The population density was 4 people per square mile. Let's talk about the median income a little bit for Hemphill County. $35,456 single. And for a family, it's about $42,036. I believe these numbers are a little bit low. This census, again, was pulled in 2020. This is 2026. I believe those numbers are going to be a little bit higher in the number expression that we're talking about. And, you know, I've always said here on the podcast that there are 2 subjects that we never talk about. We never get into a discussion about religion or politics. But I do want to kind of tap into politics just a hair. It's not something that I'm going to discuss. It's something I'm going to read. This is very interesting for you listeners out there. During the period 1912 through 1940s, okay, Democrat candidates at the presidential level predominated. Okay, they ruled in Hemphill County. Okay, the exception being in the year 1928. From 1952, the Republicans have held sway, losing the county only one time to the Democrats in 1964 landslide by native son Lyndon Johnson. Hemphill County is located within District 88 of the Texas House of Representatives, and Hemphill County is located within District 31 of the Texas Senate. And that's all I'm going to touch on politics. Again, we do not talk about politics or religion in any shape, form, or fashion here on the chat, but that was just some history, that information that I wanted to address on this podcast. And I will also say, and this is something that may be of interest for some of you listeners out there. Hemphill County, now there's 254 counties in the state of Texas. Hemphill County is the last county in Texas that went wet from dry. There are only 4 counties in the state of Texas that remain completely dry. In other words, the sale of alcoholic beverages are absolutely prohibited in the county. Hemphill County, Canadian Texas, was the last county in Texas that went from dry to wet. There is only one county here in the Texas Panhandle that remains completely dry. That is Roberts County. Its only town, county seat of Miami. So there's a little bit of history for you for Hemphill County. And yes, folks, I did talk about earlier at the podcast, we talked about the Canadian Wildcats. I'm a very avid follower of Texas high school football, especially when they get into the playoff picture, from the bi-district up to the Texas State Championship at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. And yes, Canadian Texas, the Wildcats, repeatedly have gone into the playoffs. I remember Canadian, I've actually seen Canadian at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. I was there for another state playoff game that was to take place after the Canadian game, and I got there earlier to watch Canadian play. I believe they were playing some team from down in South Texas somewhere. I believe it was Refugio or somewhere there. And Canadian is a very impressive football team. Chris Kottlenberg was the head coach there for many, many years. Mr. Chris retired a few years ago, but the Canadian Wildcats continue their journey of getting way up into playoffs every year, and even going to AT&T in Arlington, sometimes winning that state championship, sometimes losing that state championship. And I will say this, that one of the state championship games that I do remember vividly was several years ago when Canadian had to travel all the way to Houston, to NRG Stadium, to actually play Refugio in the state championship. Canadian did take the state title and had to travel all the way back to Canadian. And before they got into town, ladies and gentlemen, guess who was looking over them? Yes, it was Odd, the big green dinosaur. So there's a little bit of history for you behind this remarkable structure. If you ever are in the state of Texas and you're just traveling, it is summertime. We have a lot of travelers out on the road. And folks, I can attest to you, Interstate 40, a day and night here in Amarillo is just packed. It seems like it's like Houston. People just traveling. This is a Texas bucket list. I'm saying that too fast here. This is a Texas bucket list must. You need to get on U.S. Highway 83 North and go past this remarkable statue, the big green one-ton dinosaur, Odd. He's located just a few miles south of the county seat of Canadian. Coming up next week, we're going to be talking about America's truck stops. We're going to be talking about how America keeps rolling here on the chat. We're going to be talking about the Loves, the Pilot, the Flying J, the TA, the Petro, and the Road Ranger. These are the 5 major truck stops across the United States of America where truck drivers can take a break, they can get fuel, they can get something to eat, and how they make our everyday lives simpler. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that may not know this, without truck drivers, this country would shut down. We don't like talking about Walmart on this podcast, but I'm going to say something about Walmart briefly. A lot of people here in Amarillo and all across this country shop at Walmart looking for a good deal on something. For those of you that may not know this, everything that you see inside of Walmart, everything that you see inside of United supermarkets, everything that you see inside of Amigos supermarkets, everything that you see inside of any grocery store, anywhere in this country, is trucked in. It comes by semi, truck, and trailer. And we're going to pay a little bit of tribute to those truck drivers out there that stop at America's truck stops. The truck stops provide the truck drivers with fuel, food, parking, showers, repairs, and a lot more. That's coming up on our next podcast here on the chat. And the week after that, and this is a requested by many, many people. They want to hear my story about my journey last year with the Lufkin Independent School District. Folks, for the most part, I will tell you it is 90% positive, but about 10% of it is on a very negative scale. My story on the Lufkin Independent School District, that's coming up on the podcast 2 weeks from this morning. So now you know a little bit about Odd. He oversees U.S. Highway 83 in Canadian Texas. If you're traveling northbound and you see this great statue up on the bluff of the mountain, you know you're about to enter Canadian. That will wrap it up for this Friday edition of the podcast. Before we go, for those of you that may not have gone and looked at this, I invite you to go to my webpage. It is allenfitts.com. That's ALLENFITTS.com. It has been well upgraded. We now have a ticker that updates every weekday around 5 a.m. How this operates is I go in and select news articles from locally here in Amarillo, the Texas Panhandle, the state of Texas, and national and world news. We put that on the ticker each morning. Again, it updates around 5 o'clock on weekdays. It's not really that long, although it can get long. I invite you to go look at that. On weekends, however, it only updates the weather. So you can go look at it early Saturday morning around 5:30, just whenever time you get up, and find out what the local weather is. Not only here in Amarillo, but you can also learn the weather across the entire Texas Panhandle. Just below the ticker, on the left-hand side, you will see something that's called the Texas Panhandle 26 County Alert Grid. These are all 26 counties across the Texas Panhandle that have different colors on them. This is instantaneous. When the National Weather Service issues an alert, an advisory, a watch, a warning, or an emergency status, the county will change color. So if you're not really sure what's going on, you can go to allenfitts.com and view this live in real time. Also, we have an Amarillo Live interactive radar. You can scroll on this radar system anywhere and get your information of where it's raining. It also provides live lightning strikes in real time as they are occurring in the atmosphere. And, of course, you have your local Amarillo forecast just to the right of the radar system. And I also would encourage you at the top of my page to click on what is now known as the Live Texas County WX map. That WX is the abbreviation for weather. There's only so many characters allowed that you can put in there with GoDaddy, so I had to abbreviate weather. And when you click on that and scroll down just a hair, you will see the entire state of Texas, all 254 counties. Let's say that you live here in Amarillo and maybe you have family back, maybe say in Houston, down in Harris County, and you want to know what the weather is down there. Maybe you're traveling down there. You can go to this map. This is also live in real time, instantaneous. When any National Weather Service agency anywhere in Texas updates a county, there's a legend on the left. You want everything to be green all the time, which is clear, but that's not necessarily the case. But anytime you want to check any county out in Texas, just go to that map. You can hover over the county in color, or any county, and look over to the right under selected county, which is in an aqua blue color, and it'll tell you what that alert is. All of that can be found at allenfitts.com. And for this session of the chat this Friday morning, it will come to an end for that. Again, we're going to talk about America's truck stops next Friday right here on the Allen Fitts podcast. And my friends, until we meet again next Friday, have a great day, a wonderful weekend, and this is Allen Fitts saying, until next Friday, bye for now.